What is OpenAI going to do in 2026? Alex Kantrowitz is the founder of Big Technology, which is a Substack and podcast. Alex joined Malcolm and I for a conversation about the potential of OpenAI going public, the future of AI wearable devices, and Google's underrated efforts in self-driving. Malcolm, I don't know if you have more thoughts on OpenAI going public, or Alex has more thoughts on OpenAI going public. But I guess for either of these companies, maybe why do you think they're thinking about doing it right now? We'll start with Alex.
I don't think they're thinking about doing it right now. I think that OpenAI has been, OpenAI has been, without a doubt, the best private market fundraiser in history. They have raised so much money that the idea that every time OpenAI has a funding announcement, we come on to my show and say, hey, it's the biggest funding round in history, and dwarfing any others has been, it's getting tiresome at this point, because it's like, all right, tell me something I don't know. So Sam Altman clearly has a knack for being able to pull in various sources of funding, whether it's traditional VCs or otherwise. Just recently announced a deal with Disney, where Disney would put $1 billion in. NVIDIA, of course, is another big funder. So I think that OpenAI will continue to ride the private markets, A, because they can, and B, because their books exposed to a public market scrutiny right now might be pretty ugly. And so they will wait until they have the revenue necessary and have basically put costs under control until they actually decide to take that company public.
I don't know that they can wait, though. So that's what's interesting about this, and part of the reason that I wanted to have this conversation with you, because I read a lot of what you write on your Substack, and I've heard you make that argument before. But I feel like once you get into the orbit of Masa Son and Cathie Wood wants to throw money at you, you've kind of reached the end of your line as far as capital raise goes, right? Like, those are usually the latest stage dollars going into a thing. And especially when Masa Son is having to sell off some of his better performing assets like NVIDIA just to come up with the capital to invest in this thing, because the money you're asking for is so large and so outrageous that even those deep pockets have to stretch in order to make your dreams come true.
All right, let me make the counterpoint here, as long as as long as we're going at it. All right. So NVIDIA in November said it was going to put $100 billion into OpenAI. That was going to come in $10 billion increments. So from my understanding, that first $10 billion are in, but that is still a heck of a lot of runway for OpenAI. If, let's say, just one funder like NVIDIA has potentially $90 billion left to invest in the company. So I agree with you. You don't really have many sources of funding after this. They've also talked about like a federal backstop, which goes to show you about the size of the investments that they are taking in, and maybe their lack of confidence of being able to deliver for them. And that really is what they have to, private or public, they're going to have to deliver. But I think they're still in a place where they can continue to take private market funding for a while and make it work. But Malcolm, one of the reasons why I love speaking with you is because I'm always open to the opposite perspective, and I think you make a good argument here. But what do you think about what I just said in terms of the fact that they can continue to tap this NVIDIA money, maybe SoftBank money, and maybe even sovereign wealth?
I'm wondering, though, you made the point that one of the reasons they want to stay private is so that they can do whatever the heck they want. And I think maybe prior to that Brad Gerstner interview, we were willing to suspend our disbelief and let Vince McMahon convince us that wrestling was 100% authentic. But with that one little slip up, it made people start to wonder and question a little bit, how exactly was it that The Rock picked up the Big Show over his head, right? To continue that analogy. And now with people in the audience asking questions and being a little more skeptical, it makes the thing not as exciting to watch. And so investors...
I was going to say, Alex, sorry, I thought Malcolm was done making his point, but he wasn't. I was going to say something snarky.
Well, where I'm going with that, though, is I don't know that they have as long as they would like to finally come to the public markets with some proof, right? So Sarah Fryer at a conference says, I don't know that we are going public in 2026. The markets go, oh, wait a minute, what? We're already having questions about whether you can perform a miracle and pull off these $1.4 trillion worth of spending commitments you got out there. Now you're telling us we may not even get a chance to participate in this thing before it's already $1 trillion company when it hits the public markets. Now you're telling me you might not even have interest in fulfilling these commitments unless the US government will step in and backstop it. Like, wait a minute now. And I think that is dangerous at a time when you have one of your biggest competitors, Anthropic, saying, hey, we're disciplined over here. We might be IPO ready by next year. Just the hint of that to me creates more problems.
But why would the public market get to decide here? And wouldn't the argument that you just made put even more support for OpenAI to stay private? I mean, think about that conversation with Gerstner, right? This is the conversation that kicked off the worry about OpenAI. The question was, how are you going to fund $1.4 trillion in infrastructure investment with $13 billion in revenue? Now, Sam said it's much more. Now we know that OpenAI is expecting to hit a $20 billion run rate this year. But clearly, that type of scrutiny is not something that OpenAI seems ready for. So wouldn't the company in particular, because it is its choice, right? As long as it can stay on the private market, wouldn't the company in particular want to stay private, want to, be immune from the scrutiny of the public markets as it figures this out? And they do have more revenue generating initiatives underway. So up until, let's say late 2025, OpenAI has been primarily a consumer company. I think 70% of OpenAI revenue comes from ChatGPT, 30% comes from enterprise. Maybe there's some ChatGPT enterprise that makes it, closer to 50-50, but the company has been a ChatGPT company. Now with their latest model updates, they are going to enterprise. They are entering that area that Anthropic has dominated in, or really they're moving forward in that area that Anthropic has dominated in, which is the reason why Anthropic has been able to say, we have a path towards profitability. Anthropic is also spending like a drunken sailor in this race. So, maybe they have a little bit more discipline, but it's I don't know, I'm trying to get a wrestling analogy in here. But basically it's just like, they're just and they're basically in the same boat, but maybe a little bit more responsible, but not by much, I would say. So that's the argument to stay private.
But it's a perception problem, right? And perception becomes reality. So related, but not direct. There are cracks forming right now with the Oracle story we talked about on a previous episode, or probably several previous episodes at this point, because I've been heartbroken over this one for a while. And then you also have the cracks that are forming in private credit, which is starting to become public private credit, meaning we're starting to understand a little bit more of what's on their books and what these loans actually look like, and their ability to create these special purpose vehicles that keep it off of the balance sheet of a Meta, for example, and God knows what other companies have been creating these types of lending structures to build out data centers on behalf of whoever else so that they can remain nameless. Like, all of that is coming to a head with the CDS market basically saying to Oracle, we don't want you borrowing money anymore on behalf of OpenAI. And that has been another source of growth for them. That's been another way that they've been able to expand and put shovels in the dirt and build new data centers to build out what they believe they will need. Let us have a down market for 2 quarters in 2026 and see if the funding spigot doesn't get turned off for OpenAI.
Right. Well, that's the thing. And perception is, I agree with you. Perception matters. And let's do a thought experiment. I mean, what would happen if OpenAI decided, okay, it wants to go out in early 2026? Even though we've talked about this issues, it would be the hottest IPO of all time. I think we'd both agree.
Depends on
everybody.
The
price. Well, I would say that isn't the price, something that OpenAI to some degree can dictate, because people are at this point still acting irrationally on this about this technology. Even I would say Oracle is a case in point. Oracle acted irrationally because they wanted that hotness of OpenAI so badly that they put themselves into the debt to the point that they can't raise anymore. And so why wouldn't that pattern be repeated when the company goes to the public market, where the story would be so strong at this point that fundamentals be damned, people just wanted to get in on it?
So I wonder if these AI companies, if what the story needs is a big discovery. So right now it's been some consumer take up, if it's been some business enterprise solution. But one of the promises, and we've heard this from Sam Altman as well, is these large language models are going to help us discover like miracle cures for different diseases and personalized medicine. And you know, it's one of those things where it's like what they promised was personalized medicine, and what we're getting is a new version of the Sora video. Not to say that those aren't impressive, but I wonder if in 2026, 2027, if people will need to see those types of like grand discoveries at least continue or be fulfilled for the AI story to keep going.
Yeah, and that goes right back to this perception question. And, the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, well, this would probably be the strongest argument to IPO earlier. And that is, again, like I was saying, perception is good. And these promises that they have about AI being able to help solve cancer, they seem at least potentially feasible right now. And a lot of you guys know this, and investors, they invest, not really for what the company is going to do today, but for what it will do in the years to come. And if that is on the table, the potential for this AI product to help, with scientific discovery, if that is on the table as something that might be possible, then potentially it factors in to the IPO price, and you want to build in those future expectations if you want to go out to the public, raise a bunch of money, and have a successful IPO. Now, to comment on the technology side of this in particular, it seems like what we're going to see over the next couple of years is not that this technology is going to make these discoveries on its own. I think the best case scenario is that a scientist using a form of a GPT model can accelerate their research, as opposed to say, type into the ChatGPT window, hey, could you solve cancer? And then it thinks for 10 minutes and it goes, yeah, I think you need to put this chemical compound in the body. And that will be the end of the situation.
I want to go a slightly different direction for a second and talk about the rest of the landscape, because we're focusing solely, or I have been focusing solely on OpenAI in this context, but I think there's a broader market implication here that should be considered. And that's, there was a time up until basically October 1st or something, I don't know, where, somewhere around there, proximity to Sam Altman and OpenAI was the best thing possible for your company and for your company's share price. And now we see it going the other direction, where NVIDIA, Microsoft, Oracle, and others, CoreWeave is another example, are being directly punished for how reliant their company is on its relationship with OpenAI and Sam Altman. And what we're seeing happen is now we're in the Google camp. And anybody who's directly related to Google, Broadcom as an example, is being rewarded for being a long-term partner of Google. And that's the direction the market decides to go. So it's encouraging to me that it means that the AI hype cycle, bubble, revolution, whatever the word is still alive and kicking. It's just being a little bit more discerning about where we choose to place those bets. Agree? Disagree?
I agree with you on that one. I mean, I think what you're seeing in terms of this divergence between the OpenAI camp and the Google camp has basically been a product of two things. Like you said, some companies made what really looks like bad business deals. Oracle, for instance, taking on all that debt to continue to build here. I mean, Oracle's stock now is, I think, below where it was when it made that deal and just had the biggest gain in its history.
It was at 230 when it reported earnings, and now it's cut all the way down to about 190 last I checked.
Yeah, so that's obviously not ideal. So I think one part of this is the bad financial decisions that some of OpenAI's partners have made. And in some ways, OpenAI, probably got high on its own supply and just decided, all right, well, because we have this sheen, we can make all these deals and it will work out in perpetuity. And it had been, and now it's not. But I think this divergence, the real source of this divergence is the fact that once Google, you could say Google caught up, Google came close enough to OpenAI's models, the whole game shifted, because I think the market had been valuing OpenAI and OpenAI's partners on this idea that OpenAI would be the first to achieve some form of artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, where their AI models would just be smarter than everybody's, or smarter than the average person, and then just usher in this massive era of economic productivity. And the fact that Google caught up so quickly, remember, basically, even though Google invented the transformer model, which all this is built on, they had not really been prioritizing this technology internally, and they caught up fast, and they have distribution. And so I think the market shifted and said, whoa, okay, so we're probably not going to get this all-knowing AGI as soon as we thought. And there may not be an advantage to having the best model anymore, because ultimately the advantage is going to be on how you productize that. And Google, has had up and downs with product, but it has, once again, the distribution to get that model to billions of people much more easily, because OpenAI has to fight for every user, where Google can tack this on to every user. And that's what the market looked at. It said, we got model parity here, and we have a company with a distribution advantage and some serious technological chops. Let's maybe move some of our investment over from the initiator of this, the pioneer, to the company that has the fundamentals to win. What do you think?
I think Google initially got punished. I think there was a story issue with Google, specifically when, what was it? They were posting, it was like, who were the founding fathers? And it was like it was a diverse group of people, and people immediately go, Google went woke, their AI sucks. You can't, they're at the bad part of the innovator's dilemma, where the company has gotten so large that you can't really bring meaningful innovation there because there's too much bureaucracy and it's too big. And it turns out that no, it was an early model of AI. Gemini is pretty good. And also, Google is still pretty good at doing web search, and that ended up helping the web search business. We've talked about AI, but people are still asking questions into the Google search engine bot, and in fact, maybe asking more questions in there as well. So I think Google had a story problem, and that's why it was the PE multiple. It was a PE multiple change, not just a business cash flow change that's happened with the company.
Yeah, and I left out, let me just say this one thing. I left out one of the most important things with Google, which is that we were all talking about innovator's dilemma. Like, you're right, Ricky. And so what happened with Google search? It's not only that Google search, is still alive, even though ChatGPT is growing as fast as it is. It's the fact that OpenAI has not stood up an ads business. So Google's ads business is still growing. I think in the third quarter it grew 15%. That's a lot of money. I think over $50 billion, and it grew 15% in the generative AI era. And that's just because they just don't have any competition on search ads. So OpenAI can continue to take these users, and maybe this is a long-term threat for Google in the long run, because there are going to be more companies providing information and helping people organize and sort through information online. But in the near term, nobody can match or get close with Google's advertising technology and ad platform with search. And so that's why its business has been growing so fast, even though it faces this innovator's dilemma problem.
I think they're also shielded by having so many other things happening under the same umbrella that you can't necessarily get too hung up on one thing versus the other. Like, if we are able to scale up our production of TPUs, if Taiwan Semi is willing to take on that work to scale up our use of our build out of TPUs, because right now Taiwan Semi builds like a third of the number of TPUs as they do GPUs for NVIDIA. So the problem that Google has with being able to catch up to NVIDIA alone, set aside the fact that supposedly, I'm not the technician here, so I don't know how true it is, but supposedly from reporting by very smart people, the GPU is still infinitely more powerful than everything else these other companies want to put together, especially the newest cluster that can throw 72 of these things together on one rack. Like, it supposedly blows everything else out of the water. But Google can't even get its TPU out there in a meaningful enough way outside of their own individual use because they can't build enough of them fast enough because Taiwan Semi is busy building for everybody else. So what that says to me is I have to focus on other parts of the Alphabet story. Advertising, like you just said, search advertising revenue. And oh, by the way, YouTube happens to be the dominant streaming platform that's overtaken Netflix right now at a time where Netflix is busy enthralled in a legal battle. And so I can hang my hat on other parts of the business that kind of overshadow what may or may not be happening in the world of AI. And our share price is being rewarded for that because of how much complexity there is to our overall story. I think that's probably what's carrying more of the company right now. And I will say, I am on record having said in 2022 that I was selling out of this company because I didn't think that they would be able to get there where everyone else is going without cannibalizing their main business, which was search advertising. I was early to that because Eddie Q came out and said the same thing a year later, and the market said, oh yeah, that makes sense. Let's sell Google. Now the turnaround story, to the point you guys are making, has started. The narrative has shifted. It's, oh, wait, by the way, Google was the first to this party. ChatGPT is using technology that Google pioneered, in fact, and now they're figuring out a way to catch up and overtake them with a better version of the technology that they have been the pioneer in all this time. So I think, to your point, there is a very good chance that they will figure it out and once again be the dominant player in this space. They will even figure out how to continue to make money from that top third where the AI search results come through, even though they've turned off a lot of their advertising partners that they have had in the past. Like a lot of these, the web traffic that comes that way because someone clicks a link in an article and then it's in, that's gone. But they're fine with that because they figured out another way to generate revenue. So I agree with you in that regard. I think Google has definitely done a great job of reshaping the narrative. And the problem was that they overcorrected. They were afraid of the technology initially, so they didn't want to release it. Then they were afraid of the backlash, so they didn't want to release a insensitive product. And now they've kind of gotten their feet underneath them and said, here's the happy medium, it seems like.
Should we say one more thing about Google? They have a multi-billion-dollar investment in Anthropic. They're talking about making that investment even larger. And just recently, okay, this was in October, they announced a TPU partnership with Anthropic that's worth tens of billions of dollars and is going to bring more than a gigawatt of capacity online next year. So, you know, if you think about Google's investments, you're like, all right, you have search. You don't really have competition in search. You have a leading frontier model in Gemini. You have invested in, you would argue, if Google isn't the second place in this AI race, it would be Anthropic. So you have a big stake there, and they're buying tens of billions of dollars of your hardware to be able to power this. So they are really from a place where a couple of years ago, not even in the beginning of 2025, people on the internet were asking about Sundar Pichai's job, Google CEO Sundar Pichai's job. They are in a very different place at the end of this year, but they do have that long-term liability. We'll see where that goes.
I'm going to start using that more. People on the internet are asking about someone's job when I don't like them specifically. Like, you know, people are saying,
it's a very effective tactic. Yeah, they work. They are. Look at Reddit and Blind. There's long conversations about it with lots of upvotes.
I remember you being on CNBC, and that was the main question that people wanted to ask. Do you think Sundar will go? Do you think Sundar should go? And it wasn't that long ago.
I remember that too. It was a key question.
This episode is sponsored by Capital Area Planning Group. Capital Area Planning Group is a fiduciary wealth management firm that specializes in helping high net worth individuals and families navigate the complexities that come along with managing concentrated stock options, multiple income streams, and an ever-changing tax code. While our team of certified financial planners are well-versed in all things personal finance, our areas of expertise include equity compensation, estate planning, and multi-year tax planning. At Capital Area Planning Group, we believe in pricing transparency. That's why our fees are posted on our website, right alongside the various services we perform on behalf of our clients throughout the year. If you're tired of receiving the same cookie-cutter advice from your financial advisor, then don't wait. Reach out to us today at capgllc.com to experience a better approach to wealth management. Again, that web address is www.capgllc.com.
We have not talked about Waymo as a part of these bets and growth drivers. And it seems like, and Alex, I don't know if you have an opinion on this. It seems like Waymo's doing pretty well. They're targeting 1 million rides. They're rolling out in more cities. From my very bird's eye view of it, it seems like Waymo's beating Tesla a little bit in the self-driving battle.
I mean, a lot. If you've been in a Waymo car, you know that these things are incredible. They're smoother than a human driver. And I had a conversation with the co-CEO of Waymo maybe a year or so, or a little more than a year ago. And what she told me was basically that their technology had become generalizable. So they were able to take what they knew in one market and start applying it into other markets. Now, there was a debate about Waymo, like, can you really scale this technology? Or do you have to painstakingly map out every little fire hydrant and any road you want to drive in to be able to scale? This is what Google has done with Waymo this year. They just recently announced that they are going to do rides in Miami, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Orlando. They already are running in San Francisco, Phoenix, Los Angeles, Austin, and Atlanta. They're doing at minimum 250,000 robo-taxi rides a week, which is crazy. And they're expanding now sort of longer trips. So you can really go through large parts of the Bay Area in a Waymo right now. And of course, highway expansion is going to be a very, very big deal there, because then you start to live the self-driving dream where you basically can live. Imagine, you can now live an hour and a half outside of a major city or office center. I don't know if that's the right words, but you know what I'm saying. Hop in a Waymo and connect to the Wi-Fi from your phone or bring your Starlink, whatever you do. And you're not going to puke in a Waymo. Like one thing is really important for people that have not ridden Waymos. You are not throwing up in them. They are smooth. They know how to brake, the way a computer would, not like slam on the brake. They ease into it. And so you get your first couple of meetings in, you show up to the office for a couple hours, take your meetings, and then hop back in your Waymo and go home. So you can live further out and still have like a productive day at the office while maybe having good quality of life. It's big, it's scaling, it's really working for them. I agree. One of the most underrated stories in technology right now.
I think you just described a Long Islander's dream, right? Like that is
Could you imagine, right?
That's the dream you grew up talking about. I think that's why that's the first thing that comes to your brain as an example.
Well, after many, many, many commutes on the Long Island Railroad, led me effectively to say, let's move to Brooklyn. Yeah, that would be nice.
I think though, so talk about giving up an advantage. I think this is where Tesla should be shining right now. No one has more hours of road miles under their belt and more data on road miles than Tesla does. No one in this space, I should say. However, the focus on autonomous robot armies and Starlink satellites and taking over the US government has caused them to give up that advantage, at least the perception that they gave up that advantage. Because I think that if we were serious about turning Tesla into what I was convinced, robo-taxi, when I first heard that term, the thing that your car is out there working the other 98% of the day when you're not driving it, because, supposedly it sits for 98% of its life. And so wouldn't it be awesome if your car could go earn money for you while you're busy doing the thing that you do inside your house? Like that idea and dream of Tesla being the front runner when it comes to autonomous driving has been seeded to a Waymo. Like you said, the last frontier for them is probably going to be New York City. And the moment they actually are able to navigate New York City traffic comfortably in a Waymo, like that's it. The race is done.
Yeah, I'm laughing because on our Big Technology podcast, we have this joke that that's once Waymo can start driving autonomously in New York City, we think it's time. That's AGI. That is our AGI barometer.
You say a joke, but I think that's fair.
I think so too. That's no easy task, let me tell you.
I think it's also significant that they're testing in Denver in the winter, because that was one of the big questions too, is can you handle, they were testing in, Phoenix, San Francisco, places with nicer roads and no snowfall. And now we're starting to see that in the winter. I want to ask you, Alex, about AI devices, because that's also one of the big promises from OpenAI, right? They hired Apple designer Johnny Ive and saying, we're going to make these wearable and you're not just going to be on your phone anymore. Where are we in sort of the AI device era? Where do you think that's going?
We're early, but it really is heating up. And I would just point you to a poaching that happened, towards the end of 2025, where Meta hired Apple's head of interaction design, Alan Dye, along with at least one deputy. And Dye is going to go. He was the guy that built like the Vision OS, the operating system behind the Vision Pro. He's going to go and run design for Meta's AI hardware, the Ray-Ban glasses. I just think that shows a sense of like a moment of maturity in this device race, where like when you start to see high profile poachings, especially from a company like Apple, to run this, it means like, okay, you're not just in like the exploratory phase. This is real. Dye, he's got a mixed reputation. Not everybody at Apple loved him, but I still think he'll be an addition at Meta. And what you're starting to see is basically there's this idea that you can have some ambient computing, probably voice controlled, that will be with you as you go about the world. Meta wants to put it in glasses. Apple started to put it in the AirPods with something like Live Translate and Siri, although Siri, I think the consensus is a pile of garbage. And then there's going to be others, like OpenAI has this device that they're working on. From reports, Sam Altman and Johnny Ive have settled on the form factor. People have said that it's something like a phone without a screen, which makes me always think, well, why isn't it an app? But we'll let them show us. So I think that this is going to be something that we see heat up, maybe not in 2026, but 2027.
The problem with this, and we've seen this with the goggles, people are hesitant about what they put on their faces. So how do you do this in a way that doesn't disturb your view of my face? That's something that I think was ultimately, there's a lot of issues with the metaverse, but that was one that is kind of different. I think that the Meta is clearly trying to break away from the App Store. That's something we've talked about on the show before. But I think there will be a barrier to Meta's Ray-Bans getting more sort of widespread acceptance. And maybe this is something I am imagining, but I think there's a social friction that comes where you are wearing glasses that record other people all the time. And maybe we've sort of crossed that barrier where that's okay. But I think there is still I would say if someone were to walk up to me wearing the Meta Ray-Ban glasses, I'm like, wait, you're filming me right now without my consent? And maybe that's just a part of normal society. But I think that one of the barriers for these the two barriers for these AI devices, number one is going to be, I don't want you to mess up how my face looks. And number two, are you just recording other people all the time? And does that disrupt sort of the social agreements we have with people?
That will be an issue, but I think one thing that's really evolved from the Google Glass is that the glasses in particular have been positioned more as outdoor glasses than wear all the time glasses. And I've definitely I like to experiment with this technology, so I've rolled up on friends with the glasses on, recording them, and they're like, "Wait, what are you doing?" So, okay, I'm not going to do that again. Sort of learning what that experience is. But they are amazing when you're doing outdoors things. I know Meta has just expanded into the Oakleys, so you get these cool like outdoor visor-like glasses. And I've got a big outdoor trip coming up around the new year, and I spent a long time on Black Friday looking at that page and saying, should I buy this? And ultimately, like $500 was too much for me. But I do have sort of the standard pair of Ray-Bans, and I've enjoyed using them. They were, I had my phone in my pocket while I was doing some trekking in Nepal over the summer, but I have great videos because I had the glasses on. And I've even jumped out of a plane with them, gone skydiving with them. In that video, like it was really interesting because the people who you do the tandem dive with the instructors, like the video package is always more expensive than the jump itself. and I didn't go with the video package. And they go, yo, are those AI glasses? And I said, yes, they are. They're like, you can talk with them? I said, yes. And they're like, wait, do they take video also? And I said, yes. And they go, oh, because they just saw like half their business fall away. I think like that, we'll see businesses sort this out. But the video is great. And I think that these will be like devices that really catch on outdoors. But you're right. I think what really worries me more about the glasses on all the time is these devices that are really built to record everything you do all the time, and then like give you dispatches at the end. And it's like, how many personal conversations are those going to hear? They're going to know. And these AI models really are very good at analyzing large parts of data. So they might be like, you probably shouldn't like speak to your spouse that way, or you might have a problem coming up, or something like that. And we'll see what that leads to, because that is coming.
Agentic marriage counseling. Whoa, you might have that's an untapped market right there that you just. So here's what I would say on this. I think the two of you plus me, none of us are in the target audience for a product like this. That's the always on generation. We're too old for them to care about marketing this to us. All of us have privacy concerns because we're old enough to remember an analog world where you didn't walk around with devices constantly recording people. When you went to McDonald's and a crazy thing happened, a fight broke out, somebody threw a milkshake, whatever, nobody's thought was to pull out a cell phone and record it because we didn't have any. And then when we did have cell phones, they didn't have cameras. And then when they did have cameras, it used up the entire memory on the thing to record one video, so you never really did it. And so our knee-jerk reaction is to think, is this a thing where privacy matters? Is this a thing where I'm becoming a terrible human? Whereas people younger than us, they don't care. There are no privacy expectations. They basically live in China. And so I don't know that your opinion is going to matter so much, because the youngs are coming, whether you like it or not.
Dude, I'm on a podcast. Stop telling me my opinion doesn't matter.
By the way, like the privacy concerns, if there's anything we know about the history of the internet, is that privacy concerns tend to fall away from everyone if the technology works well. And so this stuff we're talking about, I don't know about this device recording me all day long. Once that thing makes everything in your life easier and can be like, hey, I heard you talking about, going to your parents for dinner tomorrow night. You want me to arrange the Waymo that's going to come pick you up, from deep out in Long Island because I've enabled that technology. Then all of a sudden you're like, okay, all right, this I might use this, even though, if misused, somebody will know everything about me, everything.
So Alex, I know we're coming up on time. You follow a lot of big tech storylines. Are there anything going on under the radar, stuff that's not getting enough attention in your view that folks should be paying attention to?
I mean, the big story next year is just going to be about how these AI companies tackle the enterprise question. 2025 was a year where there was a lot of doubt about, can AI become profitable for enterprises? There was this MIT story, which I'm fairly sure is inaccurate and deeply flawed, but that like 95% of businesses were not getting an ROI from AI. And it resonated because there was a question of like, oh, everybody working on AI in business, sort of look back and they're like, yeah, we do have a lot of pilots that fail, or, oh, this is really expensive. So, but you're starting to see glimmers of AI really working in business. For instance, we just did a deep dive about AI in law. And lawyers, it's going to change the law profession, no doubt about it. Just with its search and potential discovery capabilities, like lawyers can now like write long paragraphs to their document search, as opposed to like search for like keywords and terms, and take weeks of research and condense it into minutes. It's
better than an AI financial advisor. A financial advisor that uses AI.
Yeah, uses AI, exactly. So you're going to start to see people really get into these tools, learn how to use them. I don't think they're going to automate work, but we just know that every big AI company is going for this use case. Sam Altman just had a lunch with editors in New York where he said enterprise is going to be the major priority for OpenAI in 2026. Anthropic, of course, is there. Google, with Google Cloud, has really been able to take advantage of it. And you think around, okay, Microsoft's doing it too. Amazon is doing it too. The big battlefield in 2026 is going to be enterprise. And if they're able to make this work, then the IPOs will happen. Just to circle back to where we were, they'll be successful. And if they can't, then, it doesn't matter if they go public or not. The whole market will suffer because of it. I want to hear your perspectives on, do we see IPOs for OpenAI and Anthropic in 2026?
Anthropic, yes. OpenAI, no. I was on halftime. I was just on halftime. Josh Brown throws out, suppose OpenAI goes out tomorrow morning. It's at a $500 billion valuation. Isn't the market satisfied? And I almost cut him off, blurted out like, no, that's awful, because that's a down round basically because of where they last raised money. That's egg on the face that Sam Altman is not going to be willing to take. And so absolutely not. They have to be at 750, maybe $1 trillion in order for the market to be excited about it. And I don't think the market is going to be willing to give them that kind of leeway in 2026 or 2027. I think the narrative will be too far down the tracks at that point. We'll be talking about how great it is to be invested in oil and Exxon or something at that point. And so I think their window will close.
I'll agree with Malcolm because he's thought about this more than I have, clearly. I think that I think it'll happen sooner rather than later. I have no opinion on Anthropic, but I think that Sam Altman has hinted at it, where he basically said, I want regular people to be able to enjoy in the growth of OpenAI. And that to me is that signal that may not be the reason he specifically wants to go public, but that is he's starting to reason it into reality.
All right, I will say both stay private in 2026, but I'm happy to come on again and at the end of next year and apologize if I'm wrong.
Fair enough.
Alex Kantrowitz, he hosts the Big Technology podcast. He has a Substack also called Big Technology. Appreciate you joining us on This Time is Different.
Information shared in this recording and by its guests represent the views and opinions of the guests and does not represent the views or opinions of the host. This content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. This content is not, nor is it intended to be, a substitute for professional financial advice. It is always recommended that you seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your personal financial situation.